For the past few months, I've been getting a lot of comments here about Dungeon Synth. Now that's probably because Dungeon Synth rules, and you are all wise, good people with excellent taste in moody weirdness and YouTube channels. We have Bandcamp to thank for the emerging popularity, or relative popularity as compared to a few years ago, of Dungeon Synth. And I've been thinking a lot about these tweets from your friend and mine, Anthony Fantano, aka the Untitled Droid, about how Bandcamp has turned the unglamorous job of hosting MP3s into a boutique record store experience. It's thanks to them that you can learn about what's happening in Polish electro or the emerging sounds of Canada's Indigenous North. And it's also where you can go for pages upon pages upon pages of pure, unbridled, moody, medieval, slow, ambient, dark-ass Dungeon Synth. So Dungeon Synth might feel like a Bandcamp-born blimp, and for sure, a lot of this music did not exist until a few years ago. But its real roots lie somewhere between the fall of the first wave of Norwegian black metal and the rise of dark ambient and seminal record label Cold Meat Industry. Since 1987, Swedish indie label Cold Meat Industry have been releasing very avant-garde music, helping to define emerging genres like power electronics, death industrial, and most relevant to you and I today, dark ambient, through releases by artists like Aghast, Arcana, and Mortis, a founding member of black metal legends Emperor. Mortis's so-called Era 1 solo work would bridge the gap between the emerging sounds of dark ambient and his own black metal background. As a result, recordings like 1993's Song of a Long Forgotten Ghost would come to define the sound of what we now know as Dungeon Synth. Dungeon Synth is a byproduct of two of black metal's pet obsessions expanded and brought to the fore. First, the moody instrumental intros and interludes that traditionally just bridge bouts of absolute sonic chaos. And then you have the Dungeons and Dragons worship and the Tolkien mythology woven into Burzum lyrics and band names like Gorgoroth. Steeped in fantasy and history, the sound of Dungeon Synth utilizes lo-fi synthesizers and ambient textures to recall a fanciful time in a fanciful past. And even though it's mostly jank, hurdy-gurdy vibes, it's important to understand that the originators of this genre mostly came from shreddier spots, even if this is where they ended up. Raven is the synth side of Satyr, a founding member of Satyricon who sounded much more like this when they debuted in the 90s. But with 1995's Fjelltronen, Raven became a defining pillar of a new genre, along with Mortis and, unfortunately, Burzum. The first of the prison albums that Varg Vikernes would record from jail while serving time for murder and arson with access only to a tape recorder and a synthesizer, The Death of Balder is a heavyweight early Dungeon Synth release. This despite, or who am I kidding, just as often because of, Varg being infamous for burning down churches, murdering fellow black metal musicians, and espousing endless racist gobbledygook.
We are not Christian. Christianity is a Jewish religion. Christianity was originally a Jewish sect. Baptism is all about a symbolic ritual murder of the non-Jewish, of the Gentile, that they murder the Gentile child. And then they call the Jewish name that's supposed to replace the pagan soul.
As a quick aside, I only recently realized that Varg is now making clickbait, listicle type YouTube videos about how race mixing is very bad.
So-called anti-immigration parties all over Europe are very much against the use of hijab and niqab and so forth for Muslims. Why? Let's find out.
No, but for real.
So what are the top 5 reasons for why Europe is flooded with non-European immigrants? Let's find out.
Back on track here. Dungeon Synth was born in the early 90s. Its epically ambient scope and castled-up black metal visual aesthetic defined by these sprawling conceptual initial releases. This was music designed to read Robert Jordan or play a tabletop RPG to. What really altered the dungeon synth landscape was computers. While a lot of the genre's initial appeal lay in the rickety, lo-fi aesthetic of Mortis demos and Burzum Prism recordings, easy access to a range of synth sounds and home recording equipment led new artists to try their hand at making a fantastical, dark ambient experiment. While the genre did decline through the 90s and early aughts, the eventual rise of MP3 blogs and Bandcamp has led an entire new generation to discover and get inspired by these fundamental recordings, breathing new life into the genre. Today, Dungeon Synth lives well beyond Norway's borders. Eastern Europe has become a perhaps unsurprising hotbed of spooky synth activity, with Russian artists like Scarpsian carrying the torch. And Drakkar Tasso have become a mysterious cult obsession in their native Singapore. While Dungeon Synth is no doubt extremely serious music for very serious people, metal and synthesizers have been enjoying something of an exciting creative infatuation over the years. Synthwave artists with a recognizable Hesher edge like Perturbator have found a home on traditional metal labels like Blood Music, where they have been able to release this brilliant piece of video game worship. But Dungeon Synth doesn't joke. It's not traditionally nostalgic, backwards looking no doubt, but to a time that never existed when none of us were ever alive. It leaves room for the listener to imagine their own alternate worlds and history, setting the table for a unique and personal interpretation of each and every gloomy, sustained note. What do you think? Is Dungeon Synth, as you discover it today on Bandcamp, the same as when it was being made by imprisoned Norwegians? Do you have a favorite unrelated Bandcamp discovery? Please share it and let me know in the comments, and be sure to subscribe for new episodes of This Exists more often than you or I might have thought. Be excellent to each other. Still got it.